This book, Feng Shui and the Tango in 12 Easy Lessons, the title came about because people were, when we first were writing this, what, in 1994, 95, we said, you can't learn Feng Shui from a book. I mean, it's a participation sport. You have to get out there and move things and experience things and feel the energy and all that kind of stuff. And so we were doing workshops so that people could learn through a workshop. And then we did the book because people were saying, but we really need a book. So we tried to gear the book as though it was a workshop. So we were talking to you. So that's why it was 12 Easy Lessons, Feng Shui and the Tango, because eventually you have to dance with the energy. So this is what is left of the first run of the first edition book. So if you're lucky enough to be here for either last class or this class, you're getting a copy, a signed copy actually, of the first edition of this book, which has now had several incarnations afterwards.
And this comes from the fact that we've taught this class all over the world, but we haven't taught this in front of people for the last number of years. We've been doing it all on television. So to be with people again, we figured, well, let's give them something special. So that's why you get the book. We hope you enjoyed it.
In front of a live audience.
Realize that besides books on the 3 books on Feng Shui, we've also written multiple books on ergonomics, ergonomic design, ergodynamics, and books like that, kinesiology. A lot of our work comes out of sacred geometry and these other fields. So this is really not a class on Feng Shui, but there are places where the West and the East overlap. And basically where they overlap is like right here in our physical bodies, because they're an expression of our relationship to our environment.
And since we've been astrologers for 40 years that I'm going to admit to, the astrological component to these spatial design disciplines was not lost on us. And so we synthesized what people were looking at, because astrologers are watchers. They're watchers of the heavens. The people who started the geomantic sciences, or Vastu Shastra and Feng Shui and geomancy and medicine wheel, they're all systems of understanding how energy flows. And if you understand how energy flows, you can divert it and manipulate it to support whatever you want it to do in your space. I mean, energy can be disruptive, it can be calming. So you get to decide what kind of energy you want to flow in and out of and around your orbit. So that's what these are about. And if we combine that with the energies that are coming not from the Earth, but from the planets, then we kind of really can boost up the effectiveness of any of those systems.
Right, and the concept of, as above, so below, we are designed in the same way. And the reason this is so hard for many people, how many times people have an issue with living with spaces that don't function for them, is that we are programmed from when we're babies to trust our environments. When your mother's holding you in your arms, or even before that in the womb, we trust our environment implicitly. We don't question it. Whatever environment our parents make for us, that's what we consider the environment of love. Whatever they feed us, that is the food of love. That's why people have such a hard time changing their diet, because these are the foods that we relate to love. And asking people to give up love to change their diet, that's like a no-go. That's not going to happen unless they're thoroughly sick. It's the same thing happens with environments. People will not change their environments until they realize that it's making them very sick.
Well, and also understand, this is why you sort of repeat certain kinds of relationships during your life, because you're repeating the environment, whatever the environment that you had when you were growing up, when you were learning about how to live and love and be in the world. No matter how chaotic or pleasant it was, that's burned into your muscle memory. And you tend to create those kinds of spaces and relationships, whether they're comfortable or not, because they're familiar. And so once you understand that you can break some of these patterns, you can make some changes. We're fond of saying, you change your space, and then your space changes you. That's why you can never say, my house has been fully feng shuied.
Right.
Because once you complete the adjustments in your environment, then it starts affecting you when you bring about the changes that you're asking for by what you're looking at and what you're programmed by in your environment. But if that continues for a long period of time, it just gets stagnant and stays the same. You don't want the same thing today that you wanted 10 years ago. So you're constantly having to reevaluate, especially when you feel like, I'd like to make a change, I'd like to have a new relationship, I'd like to move, or I'd like to change my work. Those are times when you look at your environment and say, I'd like to make this change, but is something in my environment holding me back? Classic example, we had a client who wanted to sell her house. Her husband had passed away, and she wanted to move to a smaller space, closer to her son, but she had a college-age daughter who was in the house and did not want to sell the house. And she happened to be in the power position. Her room was located in the power position to sell this house. And she was just dug in like anything. And so we had to really explain that her energy was keeping her back from doing what she wanted to do. So you're constantly, it's a moving thing.
And what this class is about abundance, sense of prosperity and abundance. And this also comes to us from our parents, from our early upbringing. So that we develop certain patterns, and we grow up in a home that has that pattern, and then we create our first home, and we put the couch exactly where our mom had it. We put the same things in the kitchen right where our mom had it. I mean, if our father had an office at home, we design our office like our dad had it, and we recreate these patterns. The thing is, you are not your parents. You are a different person. Usually it takes till after age 40 before you recognize this. At age 40, it's called the Uranus opposition. It's when the Kundalini energy rises from the top, from the base of the spine, tries to blow the top of your head off, and you suddenly realize, wait, it's not my responsibilities that matter, it's my possibilities. And then you say, well, what can we change to make this better? So this is why this particular class is about the particular harmonics that relate to our sense of abundance. The other class was, of course, on the harmonics that relate to love. But this is about abundance and, how do we manage the energy in the space to fill up those spaces where abundance, the sense of abundance lives in our life? Is enough energy flowing to those areas? And that's what this class is really about. Are you working with the harmonics that sing that particular song?
So a little bit of review is required. It's going to sound like a review for the people who have been here last time. Most of the time when we do a little review, they say, oh, I heard so much stuff I never heard the first time, so that's
right.
Great, because we got a million of them, let me tell you. But so as we said, this systems come out of all these different disciplines, feng shui or geomancy. Even within feng shui, there's form school, there's black hat, there's flying stars. There's all kinds of other things that other people have observed and added to it to try to modernize it. But the key for me and us, I think, is that when you take something from one culture, it does not translate literally across cultures. In other words, the Chinese culture loves Saturn. Saturn is a planet of stability, order, rules. The Western culture loves Jupiter. It's a planet of optimism, expansion, opportunities, change. And so right there you can see that things that would work in one culture won't necessarily work in another culture. In fact, in the Chinese culture, black represents money. That's why all the practitioners wear black all the time. I wear for a different reason, but that's okay. So, black in a culture whose monetary system is based on a rice crop. And I think that's astonishing. The monetary systems are based on a crop. And in China, they say, when they ask you what you do for a living, they say, what fills your rice bowl? That's how they say that. I also like when they say, I love you, they say, I feed you.
Yes.
But then there's a different kind of love, and they say, I sing you.
This is so ingrained in the society that in Hong Kong and such, where English is widely spoken, people who speak Chinese, usually when they use the word love, use the English word. Because there's no word quite like
Literal.
that in Chinese.
So when you have a rice crop culture, it's grown in water, and the soil has to be very mineral rich. So when you look through the water at the soil, it's black. Black is money. What color is money in the West?
Green.
What other color works in a pinch?
Gold.
There you go.
Right.
So just taking that kind of difference into consideration, the other thing is that in Asian cultures, they are considered to be a very obedient culture.
Yeah.
1, 2,
Two,
3.
not so
That
good.
doesn't apply
Especially
here.
not in the Americas. We're really,
We don't do things because somebody told us we had to do it. We want to know why and how, and can we adjust it, adapt it, adopt it, change it, what?
and let me get my pitchfork, and then we'll talk about it again. You know, it's very, the Americas are very different even from Europe in that way.
So when you read things that are done from a classic perspective from the Asian world, you need to, we understood when we first started studying that some things just didn't work well for people. You know, you would give them the standard cure for whatever their problem, their issue was. It just didn't help. And the power of 3 comes into play with that too, because if you're activating one part of the Bagua and not another part of the Bagua, your life gets out of balance. But
Just to cover something, why is green our color of money?
The earth, I guess. Yeah.
The plants.
The plants.
The plants. Why is gold the color of money? Wheat. Golden
We're a
fields of
wheat crop
wheat.
culture.
That's why, because this is what our economy's been based upon: wheat and grains that look golden when they go ripe, and those things that are green in the earth. We're a dry crop culture. Asia's a wet crop culture. That's why the colors are different. You know, they wear white to funerals. We wear black to funerals. Black to us means mold. The plants are dying. Yes. Asia, they always want the door towards the south, right? The Western system typically, for any type of public building, faces south, but any home you want to the southwest because it creates continuity. In India, they want the door to the east, which is funny because it's actually the door of independence and the individuals, and so much of their society is based upon one particular personage. You know, it's not about a family so much.
so when I was talking about materials, I did want to mention that we are videoing this, and it will be edited into one of our television shows, so you'll either see it later on in the year on Napa TV, or all of our shows are always available on our website, spaceandtime.com. So anyway, you can see that when we started to synthesize the Earth-based science with the planet-based science, we were literally sitting across the table from each other, having coffee, making little scribbles on a notepad that was, strangely enough, shaped in the shape of Mickey Mouse's head. So we were trying to figure out the correlation between the 8-part Bagua and the 12-parted astrological system. And so we're drawing back and forth, and we realized that in the Asian system, in the Asian system, they're looking down on the Earth. And in the astrological systems, we're looking up. So if you take that Bagua and turn it down this way, that's why the inner world and the outer world sort of get flipped from the astrological point of view. But that's how that 12-parted Bagua came about. And we still have it memorialized on Mickey Mouse paper.
Yeah. What's really funny is that the Chinese system and the Asian system, you know, the Asian, the Indian, the American system, the European system, by American I mean the native people systems, all based upon the same principles. And the principles are basically expressions of the human body. For instance, if you're going to say hello to someone, what hand do you reach out? Hold your hand up. Which one? Okay, right.
Right.
Not India, but in the United States, in the West. We put our right hand out, okay? When you hold a baby, where do you tend to hold a baby? You tend to hold it up here, so you put their head by your heart, right? Do you ever tuck your shoes up close to up the head of your bed? No, because your feet are very different from your head. Well, these are basically the difference between left and right, up and down. These are basic principles in terms of how our body functions. Why do we reach our right hand out? It's because of how our body's designed. On the right side of the body are all the tougher organs. The liver is on this side. It's the largest internal organ. It's shaped like a big shield. This is our strongest side, right? So when we reach out from our strong side. We don't reach our left side out to a new person because that's our vulnerable side. That's where the stomach is and that's where the spleen is, the sensitive organs. But the baby will hear the heart on this side. So when we meet people, we keep our vulnerable side to the back. So
and you'll see that in the way that the areas of the Bagua lay out as well.
And so in the space, the sides that relate to me are on the left side, and that relate to we are on the right side of any space. This is true no matter what culture you're in because it basically has to do with the body. Same thing too. The past is always towards your feet. The future is always towards your head. You bring in food here. It works its way through the system and then returns to the earth. Same thing. The future, you smell the food. Here, it becomes food. Here, it becomes present here, and it becomes the past there. So in a space, if you have everything on the floor, what it's basically saying is that your whole life, you're focused on the past. And this you'll see in houses where people are really, what happens when people get very elderly? They start like this all the time. They're looking down all the time. They're thinking about the past all the time. What do little children do? They're like this. They're looking up towards the future the whole time. Why? No wonder they're optimistic. When you're an adult, well, you're kind of caught between. When you have kids a lot, you're like this a lot. And as time goes on and they get bigger, you actually get more optimistic about the future because maybe they're going to be independent someday and they'll get out of the house. You can have the house back. As you walk through a space, your aura is not only leaving a pattern, it's picking up a pattern. But the other thing you're leaving behind is you're leaving behind scent. And you're picking up scent at the same time. And remember, where the frontal part of the brain is where sight comes through and hearing comes through and it gets interpreted, the sense of smell, there's no interpretation. It comes directly into your body and goes directly to your limbic system where your emotions live. So when you walk into a space, what it smells like is sending you a message. And if, for instance, if you walk into a space, I remember we were consulting in South America, and this person had this painting of, it was horrible. It was all about terrorism, and it was inside their house. It was like practically the first thing you saw when you walked in the house. And, there definitely was an issue here.
And they had it like a 3-year-old child who never slept.
Who never slept.
I'm like, why do you think they can't sleep? I mean,
but as a result, when you walked in, everyone who saw this thing sent out this, not only a frequency of, but they also sent a scent of fear out. And when you walked in, the scent that you picked up in the room from everyone's, adrenaline running was so distinctive that you could not relax in this house.
Now, when we work with people, we never fix anything that they don't think is broken. So in my patient, style, I said, what can you tell me about this painting? And he depicted kind of the challenges and the odyssey that religion in his country has taken through these steps of persecution and terror and things like that, and how it kind of led to a better understanding and all this other stuff. Like, there was so much in there I never would have gotten out of there. We had to make him understand that that may not be the impression that everybody gets when they look at it, and there might be a better place for it than, if it's that important to you, that's great, but there might be a better place for it.
Right.
My place for it is somewhere that has to do with flames, but that's another. I'm a Scorpio, so, that's my solution oftentimes.
Gas can and a match, So, okay.
So, and then we have to also always be aware of our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. I'm fond of saying to people, if it feels right, it is right. If it doesn't feel right, you're never going to get used to it. If you hear yourself saying, oh, I could get used to that. No, bells, whistles, sirens, something should go off, because your brain will lie to you. Your brain will say, oh, it'll be okay. But your body will never lie. And you'll either get sick, you'll have anxiety, you'll have stress, you'll have illness. It's not worth it. So when you hear those words, I could get used to it. Next.
And this is a very important thing to manage in your life. Realize that the conscious mind is almost independent from everything else that's actually going on in your system. It's thinking about, oh, I've got my next meeting coming up and so forth and so on. But those other two systems, the sympathetic nervous system And the parasympathetic nervous system are automatic systems. Now, fight or flight, you recognize it turns on when you're stressed. The parasympathetic is your rest and digest. The point here is that when your body is in stress mode, when flight or flight was being triggered, rest and digest will not turn on. And rest and digest is essential to your health. So if you're creating situations where you're like always sitting with your back to the door, so your body's always going into fight or flight, right? Your body's staying up in this high adrenaline mode all the time. Your body's never getting to the digestive mode it needs to get into. It's not making the enzyme it needs to get into. It is also consuming all the vitamin C and all the hormones that normally consumes when the body's in fight or flight. So you have to be, and this is something that happens all the time. You'll see a couple will go out to dinner, it's a man and a woman. The man sits facing the door, the woman sits with her back to the door, right? And then the woman has indigestion later. Why? Because she's sitting with the door over her shoulder the whole time. The man wants the position because he's the defender, and if anyone walks in the door, they want to be able to defend them. But maybe you could sit sideways at the door together. You know, maybe that would be a better table, because this way everyone could have good digestion and feel safe. There's all these different places where we inadvertently put ourselves in stressful situations that then do not allow our parasympathetic nervous system to heal us. Now, the conscious mind, like I said, it's like the screen on the computer, you know. It's going on. It interprets information. That's what I was saying about how what you see and what you hear is interpreted through that. But those other systems, they get information direct through sense of touch and through scent and smell and flavor. And the thing is, your conscious mind can't remember where you put your keys. Your subconscious mind, your parasympathetic system, your limbic system, never forgot any food, the flavor and the taste of any food you have ever had in your entire life. So for instance, your mom's chicken soup. If you go over to your sibling's house and they make chicken soup, made your mom's chicken soup, and they change the recipe, they add something in, are you going to notice?
Yes.
Oh yeah. And the look on your face as you tell them that is going to be priceless, yes? Because you have this emotional relationship to that scent and that flavor. So be very, very conscious about, are you making those two systems happy? The conscious mind will work it out. Are you, when you're making the scent of your space, what's the first thing you see when you walk in the door is very, very important. That's what allows your body to be happy. When you walk in the door, your body, when it goes through that entranceway, your body goes into fight or flight. Why? The aura got compressed. To the aura, you're going through a cave entrance. It doesn't matter that a cave entrance is built out of sheetrock. To your body, which goes back to Paleolithic periods, that's a cave entrance. It's thinking, is there a bear here? Are there wolves? So your fight or flight turns on real quick, just for an instant, okay? Once you go through the door, once you see a strong image, like you go into a restaurant, you know, you go into a restaurant you've never been to before, a bar you've never been to before, you're going to meet friends there, right? What's your mode? You're a little stressed, aren't you?
Stress level.
Right? But you walk in the door and you look over and you see your three friends at the table. What's your mode now? It turns right off. If you walk in and you don't see your three friends and you're doing this, you're still in that fight or flight mode. And as long as your eyes are in motion, you are going to remain in fight or flight, burning up vitamin C, burning up hormones, stressing your body. So when you walk into a room where there's no clear focus for the eye, it's cluttered, you walk in, your eyes do this, and they go back and forth, and you can't figure out what you're supposed to focus on. You're in fight or flight. You're sending out this frequency of fight or flight all over the entranceway. You're sending out adrenaline that's tainting the scent. And what do? Whatever you had in your hand, you drop right by the door because that's the fight or flight reflex. Ever have someone walk up to you behind you and go pat you on the back and you drop your glass? That's the fight or flight reflex. Whenever you have a room where there's stuff piled up right by the entranceway, there's no strong focus for the eye to turn off the fight or flight reflex. You've got to do that right away. It's one of the secrets. It's actually the secret when our class we teach about creating clarity, about getting rid of clutter. It's the same thing. If you don't have a strong focus for your eye when you walk in, preferably up high, you'll stay in fight or flight and the room gets cluttered. It's that fast. Preferably up towards the right.
Nobody here has clutter in
No.
their house. No.
And one of the reasons why it has to be up towards the right is this part of your body right here is your strongest point. It's where if you ever how to push a car. This is the side you lean towards the car, right? You know, you lean that side. It's because it's where your height and your weight and your strength all focus and you're most invulnerable. It's why we reach out our hand from this side. It's also why we're designed when we walk to have we think we're looking straight ahead. We're not. We're actually tilted down a little bit. So the first thing we normally see in people is right across here. Because what's the first thing you notice about a person? Any suggestions? Face, smile. Any other? No one got it, real?
What they're wearing.
It's whether they're a man or a woman. Yes? Whether they're a man or a woman. Doesn't matter what their shoes are. It's whether they're. And where do you notice that first? Right across here. You notice that right across here. And with people, you see how strong they are from how strong they are bulked right around here. And that's our first question about a person. How strong are they in comparison to me? Where are they? How are they the same sex, the opposite sex? It's the first thing we notice. And we're designed actually to tilt our heads down a little bit. That's why when you place your focus, we always say place your focus about chest height, because that's where your eyes will go.
And it's also heart height.
Heart height,
yes.
And exactly. So you're charging up the heart, and you place it a little to the right because you want it on that strong side. If you do that, every space you walk into, you will feel confident. If you feel like your confidence isn't really as good as it should be, start placing strong focuses in every single room right there, and your confidence level will just rise because you're programming yourself that every space I go into, my focus is confident and strong. It's kind of hard to overwrite, don't you think?
So we're going to spend a little time on how to orient the Bagua. And for us to call our 12-parted Astro Bagua a Bagua is kind of a misnomer because yes. Bagua literally means 8 spaces. We're going to start out with the kind of simplistic view here with the 8 areas so that you can understand that energy has to come in through the outside world, the social life. You can't enter from the hearth. You can't enter from the nurturing area. You can't enter from the resource area because those are parts of your private life. You don't open that door to the energy that's coming in from the outside world. So you have to orient the figure, the Bagua, on where the energy, the most externalized energy would enter your space, and that's your front door. It can be the front door of your house. It could be the driveway of your lot. It can be on the small scale, it's going to be the door to each individual room. And that means you're going to be constantly, Ralph is always teasing about, let me borrow this for a second, teasing about making a little Bagua belt so that you can have this attached here. So whenever you're in a doorway or an entrance, you know, you'll have the orientation that the far left hand corner is the resource section and the far right corner is the love section.